in the sleepy outskirts of a small town in Florida. The early morning sun spilled golden rays across the sprawling backyard of Mike's home. The air was thick with the sweet scent of blooming jasmine and the soft chirping of birds waking from their slumber. It was a perfect morning, the kind that made Mike, a retired Army veteran, feel at peace after years of service and the constant whirlwind of city life. His loyal companion, Bella, a strong and graceful German shepherd, padded through the tall grass with a gentle determination. Bella wasn't just any dog. She was heavily pregnant, her rounded belly unmistakable beneath her sleek black and tan coat. Over the past few weeks, Mike had watched her grow quiet, more cautious, and utterly devoted to nesting. Despite the weight she carried, Bella retained her protective instincts, especially when wandering the yard that Mike had fenced to give her a sense of freedom and safety. Mike stood on the porch, sipping his morning coffee, watching Bella with a smile. The gentle sway of her tail as she sniffed the ground was a comfort to him. In a way, she had become a symbol of new beginnings, her puppies promising a fresh chapter in their lives, filled with hope and joy. Mike, who had faced uncertainty and loss during his deployments, found solace in the simple routine of caring for Bella and preparing for the arrival of her litter. As the sun climbed higher, Bella ventured closer to the edge of the property, where wild brush and thick clusters of trees marked the boundary between Mike's land and a nearby nature preserve. It was a place Mike rarely explored, too dense and unpredictable, but Bella, with her keen senses, seemed drawn to it. Her nose twitched as she followed scents invisible to human eyes, curiosity leading her deeper into the tall grass. Mike called out to her, "Bella, come back, girl." His voice was calm but firm. Usually, Bella responded immediately, bounding back with excitement. Today, though, she didn't. There was only silence. Mike's smile faded. He set down his coffee, feeling an unexpected chill crawl up his spine. He stepped down from the porch and began to walk toward the far end of the yard, calling again, his voice louder this time, edged with concern. "Bella, come on, girl, it's time to come in." The morning's tranquility shattered. The birds ceased their songs, and an uneasy stillness settled over the air. Mike's eyes scanned the dense vegetation, searching for the familiar shape of his dog. The soft crunch of footsteps in the dry grass was all that answered him, but they weren't Bella's. He moved faster now, heart pounding. His military training kicked in, but this was no battlefield. It was his home, and his family was missing. As he neared the tree line, a twisted branch caught his foot. He stumbled but caught himself, eyes narrowing. There, in the tall grass, was a trail of disturbed earth and broken twigs. Something had passed through here recently, something large, and the tracks led toward the swampy wetlands beyond the fence. Mike's pulse quickened. He knew the area was home to an invasive species that had terrified locals for years, the Burmese python. These massive snakes, some growing up to 20 feet long, were not native to Florida, but had established breeding populations in the Everglades and surrounding regions. They were silent hunters, capable of swallowing prey whole, including deer and even alligators. The thought of Bella encountering such a creature filled Mike with dread. She was pregnant, vulnerable, and though brave, she wasn't invincible. He called her name one more time, desperation thick in his voice. Suddenly, a faint whimper caught his attention. It was weak and barely audible, but it was enough to spur him onward. Following the sound, Mike pushed through the dense brush and into a small clearing just beyond the property line. What he saw next would haunt him forever. There, coiled tightly in the grass, was Bella, her body pressed and trapped by the immense coils of a giant python. The snake's scales shimmered menacingly in the sunlight, each movement slow and deliberate as it tightened its grip. Bella's eyes were half closed, her breath shallow and labored. Mike's heart stopped. The scene was like something out of a nightmare, too surreal to be real. Yet, here it was, his loyal friend caught in a life-or-death struggle with one of the deadliest predators in the region. The python hissed softly, its tongue flicking in and out, tasting the air. Bella's legs twitched weakly, her instincts still fighting even as the snake's grip constricted. Mike's mind raced. He had to act, but how? The snake was massive, far bigger than any dog he had ever seen grapple with. Panic rose like a tide, but he swallowed it down. There was no time for fear. Bella needed him. He searched quickly round for anything to defend himself with. The ground was scattered with broken branches and dry leaves, but nothing substantial enough to fight a giant snake. Then, he spotted his old garden shovel leaning against the fence, forgotten since last week's yard work. Grabbing it, Mike stepped forward carefully, trying to stay calm even as his hands trembled. The python's eyes locked onto him, sensing the threat. The moment was terrifying, but Mike's love for Bella gave him courage he didn't know he had. With a deep breath, he raised the shovel, ready to face the monster coiled around his dog. Mike's heart pounded like a drum in his chest as he gripped the garden shovel tightly. The air around him was heavy with tension, thick enough to suffocate hope. The massive Burmese python coiled around Bella was a nightmare made flesh. Its muscular body covered in glistening scales that reflected the sunlight like shards of glass. Its yellow eyes, cold and unblinking, locked onto Mike with a predator's focus. Bella lay trapped, her breath shallow, her limbs twitching weakly in a desperate bid to escape. Her pregnancy made her movements sluggish, but her spirit burned, right even in the snake's deadly embrace. Mike had never seen such a large snake up close. Stories he had heard about these invasive giants lurking in Florida's wetlands suddenly felt terrifyingly real. The python's body constricted slowly, tightening its grip with each passing second. Mike's instinct screamed for him to act fast. Time was slipping away. He glanced around frantically. The backyard was too open, nowhere to hide, nowhere to get back up. His phone was in the house. Useless now. It was just him, the dog he loved, and a giant snake that could crush a man's arm like a twig. Mike took a deep breath to steady his nerves. Memories of his army training flickered in his mind, training on how to stay calm under pressure, how to make every move count. But this wasn't a drill. This was life or death. Slowly, he raised the shovel and swung it at the python's thick midsection. The blade struck with a solid thud, but the snake barely flinched. Instead, it hissed loudly, a sound that sent a shiver down Mike's spine. The python's grip tightened even more, and Bella let out a soft whimper. Mike's hands trembled, but he forced himself to swing again and again. The shovel dug into the snake's scales, jolting its massive body. The python hissed and reared back, momentarily loosening its coils, seizing the chance. Mike lunged forward and wedged the handle of the shovel between Bella's ribs and the snake's powerful coils. The python resisted violently, twisting and slithering to maintain its grip, but the pressure from the shovel forced it to loosen. Bella gasped, her chest rising and falling as fresh air filled her lungs. Mike dropped the shovel and knelt beside her, cradling her head in his hands. She looked up at him with tired but trusting eyes. "You're okay, Bella," he whispered, fighting back tears. "I've got you." But the danger wasn't over. The python, irritated and disoriented, slowly slithered away into the shadows of the brush, its enormous body disappearing beneath thick vines. Mike stayed on his knees, watching until the snake vanished from sight. Only then did he allow himself to breathe deeply. Bella was still alive. Her panting was uneven, but she managed to lick his hand weakly. Mike could feel the rapid thumping of her heart beneath his palm, a fragile but stubborn sign of life. The reality of what had just happened hit him hard. Bella had faced a predator unlike anything Mike had ever imagined and survived. But she was hurt, badly. Bruises and scratches marred her soft fur, and Mike could see the strain her body was under. He lifted her carefully, mindful of her swollen belly, and began the slow walk back to the house. Bella leaned against him, exhausted but unwilling to collapse. Once inside, Mike wrapped Bella in a warm blanket, whispering soothing words. He called the emergency vet, explaining the situation with a shaky voice. They promised to be ready when he arrived. Time became a blur as Mike prepared to rush Bella to the hospital. His mind raced with questions. Would Bella survive? Could the puppies inside her be safe? How could a peaceful morning turn into such a nightmare? Despite the fear, one thought anchored him. He wouldn't give up. Bella's life and the lives of her unborn puppies depended on it. Mike grabbed his keys, lifted Bella gently into the back seat of his truck, and started the engine. As they sped toward the vet's office, the Florida sun climbed higher, but for Mike, everything felt dark. His loyal dog, his friend, his family was fighting for her life against a giant python, and he was going to do everything in his power to save her. The narrow dirt path leading from Mike's property to the main road twisted and turned through thick underbrush, with Bella nestled carefully in the back seat of his truck. Mike's grip on the steering wheel tightened. His eyes flicked anxiously to the rearview mirror, watching Bella's fragile form. Each shallow breath she took felt like a battle won, but he knew the fight was far from over. Memories of the python's cold, unblinking eyes haunted him. It was a monstrous creature, silent, powerful, and terrifyingly patient. Burmese pythons, once exotic pets, had become an invasive nightmare in Florida. They thrived in the humid wetlands, reproducing rapidly and disrupting the delicate ecosystem. Locals whispered stories of giant snakes swallowing deer whole, and Mike had always dismissed those tales as exaggerations, until now. As he drove, Mike replayed every moment of the rescue in his mind. The snake's thick coils wrapped tightly round Bella's body, crushing her fragile ribs and threatening her unborn puppies. The cold scales had pressed against her warm fur, and her muffled whimpers had pierced his heart. He could still hear the python's hiss, a sound that echoed like a death sentence in the quiet woods. Mike cursed himself for not being there sooner, but he refused to dwell on guilt. Bella needed him now. The vet's clinic was a modest building tucked between towering palms and flowering shrubs. As Mike pulled into the parking lot, a team of professionals rushed out, ready to spring into action. They had been warned and were prepared for an emergency. "Bring her inside," a young vet tech shouted, meeting Mike at the door. Mike lifted Bella carefully. Feeling the frailty beneath her trembling frame, she licked his face weakly, a small but fierce sign of the spirit that still burned inside her. Inside the clinic, the atmosphere buzzed with urgency. Bella was whisked away to the treatment room, where veterinarians began a rapid assessment. Machines beeped, lights flickered, and Mike was pushed aside gently, told to wait. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Mike paced the sterile hallway, heart pounding. Every now and then, he caught glimpses of Bella through the frosted glass, her eyes closed, ears twitching faintly. Finally, the lead veterinarian, Dr. Ramirez, approached. "She's stable for now," Dr. Ramirez said, voice calm but serious. "The snake's constriction caused significant bruising and some internal trauma. We're doing everything we can." Mike nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "What about the puppies, Doctor?" Ramirez's eyes softened. "We performed an ultrasound. All 8 are alive. Their heartbeats are strong, but Bella needs rest and close monitoring. The next 48 hours will be critical." Mike exhaled slowly. A flicker of hope glimmered in the darkness. The vet team began administering oxygen and pain relief. Bella's breathing gradually eased, and her body relaxed just a little. As Mike sat beside her, he noticed the bruises on her swollen belly, purple and blue patches that spoke of the python's deadly grip. His mind raced with questions about how such a peaceful morning could have ended in this nightmare. Outside the clinic, news of the rescue began to spread. A neighbor had spotted the snake earlier and called wildlife control, but the python had vanished into the dense swamp before help arrived. Stories of Burmese pythons in Florida were common, but Mike's first-hand encounter shocked the community. Locals rallied, offering support, food, and well wishes for Bella's recovery. Social media posts shared photos and updates. The hashtag #SaveBella trending by evening. Meanwhile, wildlife experts issued warnings about the growing python population and urged residents to stay vigilant. The snake that had almost claimed Bella was part of a larger, hidden problem threatening Florida's ecosystems, and pets like Bella were paying the price. But inside the clinic's quiet treatment room, Mike focused on one thing: the dog who had fought a giant snake and lived to tell the tale. Bella's eyes fluttered open briefly. Meeting his gaze, Mike reached out to stroke her fur, whispering, "You're a fighter, girl. We're going to get through this." Outside, the sun dipped, low on the horizon, casting long shadows. The battle was far from over, but for now, Bella had survived the monster in the wild, and Mike vowed to protect her with everything he had. Mike's hands shook with adrenaline and fear as he gripped the garden shovel tighter. The massive Burmese python coiled around Bella was an overwhelming sight, its thick, muscular body layered like a living fortress, crushing the life out of the dog he loved. The snake's hiss sliced through the humid air, sharp and terrifying, as if warning Mike to back off. But he refused. He had one goal: save Bella, no matter the cost. His mind raced, remembering every survival skill drilled into him during his army days. He knew this fight wasn't just about strength, it was about precision, timing, and sheer willpower. Mike swallowed the fear gnawing at his gut and took a deep breath. There was no room for hesitation. The python's grip tightened, and Bella's weak whimpers became muffled. Mike's heart shattered hearing her struggle, but it also fueled his determination. He raised the shovel and brought it down hard on the snake's scaly back. The impact echoed through the clearing, startling the massive snake. It hissed louder, muscles rippling, but the coil loosened just a fraction. Mike didn't stop. Again and again, he struck the python's body, aiming to break its hold without harming Bella. Each strike sent vibrations up his arms, and sweat poured down his face. The snake fought back fiercely, twisting and writhing to maintain its grip. But Mike's resolve never wavered. Then, with a desperate lunge, Mike wedged the shovel's handle between Bella's ribs and the python's crushing coils. The leverage worked. The snake hissed, recoiled, and slowly started to loosen. Bella gasped, her chest rising and falling with a sudden rush of air. Mike dropped the shovel and knelt beside her, cradling her trembling head. She looked up with tired, grateful eyes that held a fierce glint of survival. "You're going to be okay, girl," Mike whispered, brushing the damp fur from her face. The python, now disoriented and angry, slithered off into the thick brush, disappearing beneath the shadows of vines and leaves. Mike's breathing remained heavy, but relief flooded his body. Bella was alive. Carefully, Mike lifted Bella into his arms. Her body was bruised, her belly swollen with puppies, but her spirit remained unbroken. She nuzzled his neck weakly, her warmth grounding him. The weight of what had just happened settled over Mike. The horrifying moment when a giant python nearly ended Bella's life. The frantic rescue that saved her, and the fragile hope now. Pulsing between them, without hesitation, Mike carried Bella back to his truck, wrapping her in a soft blanket to keep her warm. The adrenaline faded, replaced by a deep exhaustion. But there was no time to rest. As Mike started the engine, Bella's eyes closed briefly, her breathing slowing but steady. The rescue had been successful, but the real fight, healing, was just beginning. The ride to the vet was tense and quiet. Mike spoke softly to Bella, telling her stories of their past adventures, their plans for the puppies, and how much he loved her. She responded with gentle licks and a faint wag of her tail, reassuring him that she was still fighting. At the emergency clinic, Mike rushed inside, carrying Bella to a team of ready veterinarians. They took her immediately, hooking her up to oxygen and monitors, and began assessing the damage. Mike waited anxiously, pacing the sterile halls, replaying the rescue in his mind. Minutes later, Dr. Ramirez approached him with guarded hope. "Bella's stable, thanks to your quick action," she said. "Her injuries are serious, but she's a fighter. We'll do everything possible to help her and her puppies." Mike nodded, tears of relief stinging his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "She means everything to me." The day that began with peaceful sunshine had spiraled into a desperate battle for life. But through courage, determination, and love, Bella's story had taken a turn toward hope. Mike stayed by her side, ready for whatever came next. The roar of the engine filled the cab of Mike's truck as he sped down the winding roads toward the nearest veterinary emergency clinic, 25 miles away. Bella lay carefully curled on a pile of blankets in the back seat, her chest rising and falling. In shallow, uneven breaths, Mike's knuckles were white from gripping the steering wheel, his mind racing faster than the speedometer. Every mile brought a mix of hope and fear. Bella, his faithful German shepherd, was pregnant with 8 puppies, lives growing inside her, fragile and precious. The python's crushing grip had threatened to snuff out all their futures in a heartbeat, but Mike refused to let that happen. He promised himself he would do whatever it took to save her and the puppies she carried. As the truck bounced over potholes and narrow bridges, Mike's thoughts swirled like a storm. He pictured Bella's brave eyes locked onto his during the rescue, the way she'd nuzzled his neck despite the pain. Her trust fueled his determination to get her help fast. At the clinic, a team of veterinarians and techs were already prepared. For the emergency, Mike carried Bella inside, the weight of her trembling body heavy in his arms. The sterile smell of antiseptic and the hum of machines filled the air. As the staff whisked her away for examination, Mike found himself pacing the waiting room, the reality of the situation settling like a stone in his gut. Minutes stretched, each one endless and heavy. The vet's words echoed in his ears. Bella is stable, but the next 48 hours will be critical. Mike replayed the scene over and over. The python's brutal coils, Bella's desperate whimpers, his frantic battle with the snake. It was a nightmare come true. Yet, here she was, alive and clinging to life. Finally, Dr. Ramirez emerged with an update. The constriction caused bruising and some internal injuries, she explained carefully. But the biggest relief is that the puppies are still alive. We monitored their heartbeats with ultrasound. All 8 are strong for now. Mike felt a fragile hope flicker within him. Against the odds, Bella had survived both the python and the trauma it inflicted. The fight was far from over, but the first battle had been won. Is there anything I can do to help? Mike asked, his voice thick with emotion. Right now, it's about rest, monitoring, and managing pain. Dr. Ramirez said, we'll keep Bella on oxygen and fluids, watch for any complications, and hope her body holds up. Pregnant dogs can be delicate, especially after trauma. Mike nodded solemnly, determined to be there every step of the way. He thanked the staff and sat down beside Bella's treatment room, where he could see her through the glass. She lay quietly, eyes closed but breathing easier. Outside, the Florida sun climbed higher, and the world continued unaware of the terrifying ordeal that had unfolded just hours earlier. But for Mike, everything had changed. Bella wasn't just a pet, she was family, a symbol of resilience and love in a harsh world. News of the rescue had already begun to ripple through the local community. Neighbors sent messages of support, strangers shared the story online, and wildlife experts warned of the dangers posed by invasive pythons in Florida's wetlands. Mike's encounter wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a growing crisis threatening pets and wildlife alike. The vets worked tirelessly through the day and into the night, performing tests and monitoring Bella's progress. Mike stayed by her side, whispering encouragement, brushing her fur, and never letting her feel alone. At one point, Bella stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She met Mike's gaze with a weak but unmistakable spark of recognition. He smiled through tears, reaching out to gently stroke her head. We're going to get through this, girl, he promised. You're the strongest dog I know. The hours crawled by, each one filled with anxious waiting and quiet hope. Bella's pain was managed, and the puppies inside her continued their silent struggle for life. Mike knew the road ahead would be long and uncertain, but in that moment, all that mattered was the bond between man and dog, and the unbreakable will to survive. As night fell, and the clinic's lights glowed softly, Mike stayed awake, watching over Bella, ready to fight alongside her until the very end. Night had fallen over the quiet town, but inside the veterinary clinic, the battle for Bella's life raged on. The dim lights cast long shadows across the sterile room, illuminating the delicate form of the pregnant German shepherd lying on the examination table. Her breathing was steady, but shallow, every inhale a quiet fight against exhaustion and pain. Mike sat nearby, his eyes never leaving Bella's tired face. The long day had worn on him, but there was no thought of rest. His mind was a storm of worry and hope that Bella's strength and the puppy's heartbeats would carry them through this dark moment. The snake's brutal attack had left more than just bruises. Internal bleeding, muscle trauma, and the sheer stress on Bella's body threatened both her life and the lives growing inside her. Dr. Ramirez and her team worked tirelessly, running tests, administering for fluids, and carefully monitoring every vital sign. At one point, Mike reached out to gently stroke Bella's head, whispering words of comfort. She responded with a faint wag of her tail, a small, fragile gesture that felt like a victory. It reminded Mike why he was fighting so hard. Outside the treatment room, the clinic was quiet except for the soft hum of machines and the occasional footsteps of nurses checking on other patients. But for Mike, the silence was filled with the echoes of that terrifying morning, the python's cold grip, the frantic rescue, the desperate drive to save Bella. He thought about the wildlife experts who had warned him about the growing python problem in Florida. These giant snakes were not just a threat to pets. They were slowly destroying the delicate balance of the Everglades ecosystem. Mike felt a mix of anger and helplessness. How had such a beautiful, peaceful place become home to these silent hunters? But tonight, those worries had to wait. Bella's life depended on now. Hours passed, each one filled with tense waiting. The vet team periodically updated Mike, sharing cautious optimism and explaining the challenges ahead. Bella's body was bruised and battered, but her heart remained strong. The puppies inside her tiny bodies flickered faintly on the ultrasound screen, little sparks of life that kept Mike's hope alive. Each heartbeat was a promise, a sign that the miracle of new life might yet emerge from the nightmare. Mike leaned back, exhaustion threatening to pull him under. But every time his eyes closed, he saw Bella's face, brave, loyal, fighting for her family. He remembered the moment he first saw her as a puppy, the way she bounded into his life with endless energy and love. She had been his protector, his companion through thick and thin. And now, as she faced her greatest challenge, Mike vowed to be hers. Suddenly, Bella stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She looked around, confused but alert, then found Mike's face. A tear slipped down Mike's cheek as he whispered, "You're a warrior, Bella. I'm right here." The connection between them was undeniable, a bond forged through years of friendship and the trial they now endured together. As the night deepened, Mike stayed awake, holding Bella's paw in his hand. The clinic's quiet walls became a sanctuary, a place where love and hope battled fear and uncertainty. Outside, the world slept, unaware of the silent battle unfolding within. But Mike knew one thing for certain: no matter what happened, Bella was not alone. Together, they would face whatever came next, one breath, one heartbeat at a time. The first light of dawn crept through the clinic's windows, casting a soft glow over the room where Bella lay resting. Mike had barely slept, his eyes bloodshot but unyielding. The night had been long and filled with moments of terror and hope. But now, as the sun rose, a quiet shift began to settle over the room, a turning point in Bella's fight for survival. Dr. Ramirez entered, her face calm but thoughtful. "Bella is showing signs of improvement," she said gently. "Her breathing is steadier, and the bruising hasn't worsened overnight. Most importantly, the puppy's heartbeats remain strong." Mike's chest tightened with relief after hours of watching his beloved dog struggle. This news was a beacon of light piercing through the darkness, but the vet was quick to remind him of the fragile balance. Bella still needs strict rest and close monitoring. The next few days will be critical to ensure she doesn't go into labor too early or develop complications from her injuries. Mike nodded, swallowing his worries. He was prepared to stay by Bella's side, no matter how long it took. The bond they shared had been tested like never before, but it was stronger than ever. As the day progressed, Bella's condition continued to stabilize. She lay quietly, occasionally lifting her head to look at Mike with tired but trusting eyes. He talked to her softly, telling stories of better days, of walks through the park, games of fetch, and the joy that awaited her once she was well. Outside the clinic, the news of Bella's ordeal had sparked a wave of compassion and concern. The local community rallied behind Mike and Bella, sending messages of encouragement and offers to help. Wildlife experts renewed their calls for vigilance against the invasive pythons that had become a growing menace. Mike found himself reflecting on the delicate balance between nature and human life. The python, while a predator, was also a creature, trying to survive in an ecosystem disrupted by human hands. Yet, the threat it posed to Bella and countless other animals was real and urgent. In the quiet moments between treatments, Mike made a decision. He would not only fight to save Bella, but also raise awareness about the python problem. If his story could help prevent another tragedy, it would be worth every sleepless night. That evening, as Bella rested peacefully, Mike reached out to hold her paw. The warmth of her fur against his skin was a comforting reminder of her resilience. Suddenly, Bella twitched, her ears perking up. A low whimper escaped her throat, and Mike's heart leapt. Could this be the start of labor? He called Dr. Ramirez immediately. The vet arrived quickly, her expression serious but calm. "It's too early for labor," she explained after a quick examination. "Bella is experiencing stress from the trauma, which can cause contractions or restlessness. We'll manage her pain and keep her as comfortable as possible." Mike exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. The fight was far from over, but Bella was still holding on. That night, as the clinic settled into quiet, Mike sat beside Bella, watching over her like a guardian angel. The bond between them was a shield against the darkness, a promise that no matter what, they would face the future together. And deep inside, the puppies continued their silent struggle, little warriors growing stronger with every heartbeat. Mike knew the road ahead would be long and uncertain, but for now, at this turning point, hope shone brighter than ever. Days passed slowly in the veterinary clinic, each one a delicate balance of hope and vigilance. Bella remained under constant care, her body slowly healing from the python's cruel grasp. The bruises faded, and the pain lessened. But the most important miracle was unfolding quietly inside her, a litter of 8 tiny puppies. Growing stronger with each heartbeat, Mike was by her side every moment. He could be a constant presence of love and strength. He spoke to Bella softly, his voice a soothing balm amid the sterile walls of the clinic. "You're doing so well, girl," he would whisper. "We're almost there." The community's support never wavered. Messages poured in from neighbors, friends, and even strangers who had followed Bella's story online. Donations helped cover veterinary bills, and wildlife groups used the incident as a rallying point to educate the public about the dangers of invasive pythons in Florida. Mike's determination had grown into a mission to protect not just Bella and her puppies, but all animals at risk. He began working with local wildlife officials, helping track python sightings and advocating for stronger conservation efforts. One morning, as golden sunlight spilled into the clinic, Dr. Ramirez smiled at Mike. "Bella's ready," she said. "We're going to deliver the puppies today." Mike's heart soared. The moment they had been waiting for was finally here. The delivery was long and intense, but Bella's courage never faltered. With the vet team guiding her through the process, 8 healthy puppies came into the world, tiny, wriggling bundles full of life and promise. Mike held each newborn gently, tears streaming down his face. The sight was overwhelming after all. The fear and pain, new life had triumphed. Bella, exhausted but proud, nuzzled her puppies lovingly. Despite the trauma she had endured, her maternal instincts were strong and unwavering. In the days that followed, Mike watched Bella transform. Her strength returned, and the puppies grew quickly under her care. The bond between them was a testament to resilience, love, and the incredible will to survive. The python's shadow had loomed large over their lives, but it was love and courage that won the day. Mike often reflected on the ordeal, the terror of that morning, the desperate rescue, the long nights at the clinic. But most of all, he thought about Bella's spirit, unbroken and fierce. Together, they had faced the impossible and emerged stronger. Bella's story became a symbol of hope in the community, inspiring others to protect their pets and raise awareness about invasive species threatening local wildlife. Mike and Bella continued their walks through the park, now with a playful litter of puppies by their side. The peaceful mornings, once shattered by fear, were now filled with joy and new beginnings. The giant python had tried to coil around a family, but instead, it had only strengthened their bond. And in the quiet moments when Mike looked at Bella and her puppies, he knew one thing for certain: love, resilience, and courage can overcome even the darkest of shadows.